So this is a mortality chart. So you have deaths per 100,000 on the y-axis, and on the x-axis you have the years. That's time, right? So that's your mortality trend over time, and each point is an aggregate of all these people that died from a particular disease, and then normalized to deaths per 100,000. Now, this is what I talked about. This is a 1960s.
So Roman, just to clarify that for people listening. So the mortality trend from 1900 to 1968, it goes up and down, but if you draw a line through the middle, it's a curve. It's quite a strong curve going downwards, I would suggest.
Right. So this is, well, I'm showing here is what a mortality trend line is, right?
Yeah.
So, so here's the link to, just a link. I think it's on the next page. Anyway, so this is the 1960 CDC document. On page 85, you'll see that top black and white chart that somebody hand drew compared to the chart I would create decades later, the green chart at the bottom, and they're an exact match. So that just confirms my data is correct, which I already know it's correct, but it just gives people more confirmation.
Yeah. So those original drawings is what I've found myself.
Yeah. So on the website, you have how I made each of the charts, where all the references are. And here's the link to that CDC, I assume it's still there, document. And on page 85, you can see deaths from measles and whooping cough and the flu. And you can see just in this picture, everything was declining.
Yeah.
So now we'll go, we just talked about the measles deaths, and we can see in 1963, they came out with a vaccine that were already down by over 98%. You can see it's just trailing off to not a big deal.
Do you know, I always think of an analogy when I look at graphs like that. Being English, I'm into football, or what you'd call soccer.
Sure.
And imagine if there's a player in the team and they've got the ball and they dribble around everyone else in the opponent's team, stop the ball on the goal line and allow one of their teammates to score the goal, right?
Yeah.
Well, who was responsible for the goal? Was it the guy who actually scored the goal? Or was it the guy who went around the whole team? Right.
The guy who scored the goal, obviously. Yeah. So this is the first chart I made, and which was really just a shocker. I mean, it's clear that most of the work had already been done before they started vaccinating, right? And here's England. Again, they started in 1838, and you could see deaths per 100,000 were quite high, 30 to 60. Actually, earlier on, it was 70 per 100,000. And you could see around late 1800s, it starts plummeting. There's a couple of gaps in there because I didn't get all the data for every year. Because when you're trying to look through historical documents, you don't always find everything. So then they came out the vaccine in 1968, and you're already down at that flat line, down by almost 100%.
Yeah.
Now, this is what I used to believe, that there were deaths from diseases, and then they came out with a vaccine, right? And it just dropped off. This is the belief system I had and what most people have. This is, completely wrong. This is not real. This is a fantasy. It's not what happened. What happened is this. This is what happened. This is not true at all in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Although this is what you're led to believe, because, and I talked to lots of parents and people, when they go to the doctor's office, they get their shots, for their kids. And they're just either given or they're told, well, if you don't get it, you're going to die. There's no discussion. They're not giving any data. They're simply told, this is what we're doing today. Or, well, if you don't do it, you could die. Your kid could die. But they don't tell it.
Or they're not allowed to go to school.
Yeah, but why? Because you're going to spread the disease and everyone's going to die.
Yeah.
But
and social services might come after you for being a bad parent. Yeah.
But the main underlying reason is because people think everyone's going to die. If you spread measles around, we're going to go back to the time when people were just dropping dead in the streets. And so here's an example of a place, Nutrition Reviews in 2000, where they noticed in Glasgow a 99% decline in mortality from measles before there was a vaccine. So you can find it in the medical literature, but not very often. Whooping cough in the United States, bigger killer, early 1900s, came out with a vaccine in the 40s, we're down by 92%. And then when we look at the trend line, so we have a trend line now, where did the vaccine come in? You can't tell from the picture. There's no big drop off.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it came in here when 90% of the work was already done, and the trend line continues on as if nothing ever happened. Whooping cough in England, 1957, vaccine already down. You can just look at the picture. You're down almost 100%.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I still look at these charts and go, wow, this is so shockingly insane that no one knows this, or virtually no one knows, and more people know now, but it's just, it's, everybody should know this. And everybody can go to the website. This is all public information. So when you go to the website, you can use those charts to do anything you want. You can write your own books. You can make a video, because it's public knowledge. I just put it into chart form.
Yeah.
And this was recognized in a particular book from 2012. And here they noticed that you had basically a 97% decline before there was a vaccine in the 50s, right? So most of the work was already done.
Yeah.
So you can go look up this book, Atlas of Epidemic Britain, a 20th century picture. And this is their picture in the book. So I'm not the only one that ever noticed this. But it's rarely noticed, and it's almost never mentioned.
Yeah.
And we talked about earlier that in this particular case, is not normalized to deaths per 100,000. It's just the total deaths. So 1900, you had 10,000, 12,000 deaths per year, and it's going down, down, down. By the time 1957 came along, it's near zero. And this is what they had a DTP scare in the 70s, and we have a big drop in vaccination rate. The right-hand y-axis shows you percent of vaccination coverage, and it plummeted it down to 30%. Panic ensued in the medical profession. They got that back up to over 90% coverage. But what you'll notice is there's no real difference in death rate.
Yeah.
And not everybody started coughing in the streets, coughing up blood, and everybody's dying, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
Supposedly there were more cases of whooping cough, but that's simply testing for a bacteria. You're testing for this Bordetella pertussis bacteria. And if no one's vaccinating, more people are now testing. So now they're looking for it. And once you have the vaccine, doctors don't look for whooping cough because they assume the vaccine is taking care of it. So you no longer look for Bordetella pertussis. So now whooping cough incidence would drop off.
Thanks for watching this video on our YouTube channel. If you want to listen to the full episode, you can do by subscribing to the Radical Health Rebel podcast using the QR code on the screen. Or if you, like me, you prefer to watch the full episode, you can subscribe to our Substack using the QR code on the screen right now.